podcast while I'm thinking in my head.
As endurance riders, we spend hours with our horses, training them to be fit enough to compete in rides from 80 to 160 kilometres in a day. These horses cover varying terrain at speed and need to be strong, fit and adaptable. With the amount of hours we spend in the saddle, training and competing, the horses need to have efficiency in their movement, balance and correct loading through their limbs to avoid overloading and then injuring themselves. A focus on biomechanics is absolutely essential for our endurance horses' success, yet it is often neglected amongst our community. With the knowledge, technology and veterinary practices we have today, it's hard to think that the average number of competitive years our horses have are decreasing. Our vets have access to multiple injury plans, x-rays and MRI technology, and yet lameness and injury are causing our young horses to be out of competition before they've even reached double digits.
Do you think that an increase of horses having a shorter competing career links to bad biomechanics patterns of training? Yes. Big yes. We concentrate too much on what's in front of us. So my horse has a stifle issue, or my horse has hock arthritis. I can actually think of a lot of people now that kissing spines is diagnosed. Well, my horse has kissing spines. Yeah, it does have kissing spines. Probably got a whole lot of other things going on in its body as well. Let's not just concentrate on kissing spine. It has probably that because it's contracted in the back and it's in extension all the time. What else is going on in your horse? What else can we see? Injuries or issues that can be created as a result of bad biomechanics, patterning. So you can have the one that you're going to see, which is your navicular syndrome, your kissing spine and all your different arthritises, you know, whether it be hock, stifle, the kissing spine, the fetlock, the knee, the shoulder, the elbow, the neck, all those sorts of things. They're the ones that you can see, and you can see the direct injury, you can see a lesion in the suspensory or something like that. But then you have other ones that are within the hoof capsule, that's bruising. And if you think about tendonitis, ligament strain, things like that. So you may not necessarily see that, but the horse will feel it and they'll want to get away from it somehow. How the behaviour manifests from that, you know, whether it's physical and mental, usually it's a little bit of both. But the types of injuries, some you can't see and some you can see.
This shortening of the career can also be found in endurance. Because of the kilometres our horses complete each year, dressage and biomechanical training is crucial to their success, especially when compared with other disciplines. Every hour we spend in the saddle, our horses become more and more prone to developing bad biomechanical patterns that can create issues such as lameness and muscle tears over many kilometres. This means that it is absolutely essential for us to bring this up in our training.
Your endurance horse, you need longevity. What do you want to do, especially because endurance horses are going to go such a long way and actually over different terrains. So you want to minimise your tissue degeneration. So you don't want to end up with the lame or the bony change.
Biomechanics should be something that all horse riders should be looking at. Endurance horses go for many more miles, and if their spine is aligned, if they have a well-fitting saddle, if the riders are looking at straightness, and we've got a nice open gullet which allows the hyoid to relax, allows the horse to breathe, allows the horse to move freely flowing, then we know that those biomechanics are working really well over the length of kilometers that an endurance rider actually takes their horse.
Specifically, because, well, I don't know if I can say specifically, because endurance horses are still horses. Biomechanics is about soundness. It's about getting them to do what they do as efficiently and with as little abnormal strain as possible. So it's fundamental, and when you think about it, our horses go further, faster, longer than your average dressage horse or show jumper. So it's probably even more important for them than it is for other sports.
I think that most training, regardless of the discipline, is important for endurance horses because of the length of time that we spend on our endurance horses. You can do a 3-minute dressage test and get away with a lot of undisciplined techniques, but in endurance it will always end up showing up. So if you have any issues, any balance issues, any niggles, any soreness, they might be able to cope with it for a small period of time, but given that we're on our horses from anywhere from 6 hours through to 16 hours, it will end up showing up the same way it would in us. We could lift weights for a few minutes and be fine, but if someone asked us to lift weights for an hour, then it's going to show. Any issues that we have will show, and it's the same with our horses.
What changes have you seen in your horses, and how has that affected their performance at endurance rides?
The balance and the evenness. So if I look at my mount specifically, being Sunny, after a period of time he would want to be on one diagonal as a preference more than the other. Yet now there is no preference. You can't tell what his favourite side is compared to the other one, and that's such a nice feeling, not having to worry about having to be on his left diagonal because that's his preference and him bumping you off the right one. He doesn't have a preference now, so for him it's the evenness and the balance that he has, and that happens over a long period of time, and longer periods of time than what he's ridden previously.
At this stage you might be asking, what is biomechanics that makes it so important for our horses?
I would just say straight off the bat, the correct functioning of the myofascial and skeletal system in motion. But I'd like to add, for each individual horse, it needs to be the least damaging for that horse. So again, not one size fits all. More of an explanation, again, it's to do with balances in the system, forces, gravity, tension and compression, and how that all fits together for that individual.
Biomechanics. It's the study of the mechanical laws relating to movement or the structure of living organisms. It's optimal, functional, equine movement.
So why is it important to teach our horses functional biomechanics? I'm saying the word functional because I see a lot of dysfunctional biomechanics as well. That's another story. So habitual patterns rule usually. Everybody has habitual patterns, that the way that they like to do something, the horses have habitual patterns. So that's why we're teaching them to function within their body better. They don't actually care how they're moving until it starts to hurt, that they feel that you might not feel yet and you might not see. They don't care, and then they go, oh, that hurts. Okay, what am I going to do with that? Oh, I'll just shift over. I'll just shift my body this way, or move my leg a little bit that way. Oh, it's gone. Okay, I can move like that forever until that starts to hurt, and then do something else. And they just, again, like I said, morph, or injuries happen, and boom, it's gone. That overloaded tendon now just said, I've had enough.
Why is it important to consistently teach your horse biomechanics? It's important because when the foals are born, there's no guarantee that that little foal is straight or that its spine is aligned. It has injuries along the way and incorrect training, such as holding the gullet too close, and that would lead to other problems within the skeleton, which leads to problems with the muscle formation, which then makes the fascia grow incorrectly around those muscles and also makes the movements not go in the straight line that it was meant to go in. There are a number of things that we can do to help them. Along the way, all those compensations that come in before they are backed and ridden start to make the horse move in a way that is not perfectly aligned. And that's what we need to try and teach them before we get on their backs. Otherwise, they're trying to carry themselves with compensation, and then you put a 50 kilo, 60 kilo person on top, and that unbalances the horse even more. Injuries come along, and that creates another type of compensation, and the health that has to go through that, the healing and the correct training again to move an injured limb is quite substantial. Incorrect training, a many-faceted problem or issue to actually have. There's lots of ways incorrect training comes about. Injuries can happen where a rider is not aware that the horse is actually compensating, perhaps thinks that the horse is trying to totally ignore the schooling, and that in itself sets up a misalignment with the pony and the rider, and therefore can create again compensations. Starting ponies too early, when the skeleton is not actually fully formed, creates again pressures on joints, can affect the feet, and we've all heard that saying, no foot, no horse.
Many things can affect your horse's biomechanics. Previous injury, poor training techniques, saddle fit, rider position, unreleased fascia, shape and health of the hoof can all develop into bad biomechanical patterns over time. This causes your horse to be more susceptible to injury, which means vet outs are more common. So, what are these things and how can they affect your horse?
Okay, so fascia is the connective tissue that basically binds and encapsulates almost at every level on the horse. So it's between the muscle fibers, it's around the muscle fibers, it's under the skin, it's literally like a spider web of filaments that just surround all the other tissues in the horse. It's amazing. It is basically the essence of what gives horses or anyone movement, and provides like lubrication and support and even nourishment to muscles, bones, everything. So it supports the biomechanics, obviously, by the fact that it links everything together and provides that, I guess, net, but it doesn't hold, like it can't hold things up. It's like, again, spider web, but it just connects everything and supports it to achieve its full function. So where fascia is tight, you'll end up with restrictions in muscle movement. And then because the fascia is all interconnected, that can then refer elsewhere as well. So it's like a pebble in a pond theory. And where the ripple starts, it then can spread out. For example, a horse that is tight in the hind end will often be sore in the rhombus just behind the pole area. Or if a horse is out in its jaw, it might be sore in the hind end and things like that. So yeah, it refers across the whole animal.
Rider biomechanics is as important as equine biomechanics, because if the rider is crooked or compensating in some way, they will have more weight on one side of the saddle. The pressure will be different on the horse's back, and all of this, I mean, that's a very small part of it, but all of this will actually impact on the horse moving in straightness and spine alignment. Looking at poor saddle fit, very often the rider is not aware that the saddle is actually poorly fitted to the horse's back. Horses have lots of different shapes of backs. There are very many different shapes of saddles out there and lots of different widths across the withers. If you have a very slim fitting saddle, pressure that is pushing onto the scapula, which pushes down into the ribs and the sternum and the thoracic sling, then the horse will be going on the forehand and trying to hold its head up by using all the muscles under its neck. And that leads me onto a really good fitting saddle, which can actually help the horse to breathe easier, for the horse to be able to lift its sternum, use its thoracic sling, and not have to use the muscles under the neck to hold its head up. That also leads me into thinking about the gullet. Lots of well-intentioned riders use the reins as a lever or a balancing point, and that creates a shortening of the neck and the horse coming behind the bit, which closes up the gullet and also stops the horse from breathing. With lack of air in the muscles, then a horse is going to end up with lactic acid and stiffness at the end of a ride.
Every time a horse moves, the way the foot hits the ground will affect how the forces of that impact on the ground transfer up the horse. Now, if that hoof is imbalanced when it lands and hits the ground, that's going to load the joints unevenly and potentially lead to sore muscles, tendons, ligaments, that kind of thing in the horse. So making sure that you trim the horse's feet in a way that provides for a even and balanced impact with the ground is going to make a huge difference to how the horse thinks and feels and moves, and how balanced and functionally correct their movement will be. So what happens with a hoof or with horses and their movement and feet is that the horse's hooves are highly adaptable to changes in the environment and the way a horse moves. So if you have a horse with poor hoof conformation, that's going to create issues further up in the horse, in its body and the way it moves. But it's also the reverse, like a horse that has a sore muscle may land differently on the foot, and over time that will change the shape of the foot. For example, a horse that has, say, soreness at the back of an elbow or something like that may then lead to the horse not landing correctly on its heels, and over time the heel height of that horse will creep up because it's landing and loading its toe more. So that can turn into like a clubfoot that then has a whole change in the shape of the balance and how the horse holds its shoulders, and then how the saddle fits on top of that, and then its whole way of going. So you want to always ensure that the horse's feet are trimmed correctly for its conformation and for a balanced way.
By simply acknowledging the fact that biomechanics is important and making an effort to improve our riding and position, as well as adding biomechanics sessions into our weekly training, we can develop our horse's strength and balance, therefore increasing our horse's longevity so that we can enjoy our sport with more success.